Hi YouTube, Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There is a subscribe button and a bell below if you want to be notified as to when I upload more content. And in doing so, you also help support this channel. So I normally say that I'm coming to you from Ghana country, and I acknowledge the Ghana people from Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of this land. Not actually on Ghana country at the moment, but I just want to acknowledge them anyway, because that's where I know they reside. This video is going to just talk a little bit about the upcoming new moon, which will be in the astrological sign of Aquarius. And it will be at 7:23 a.m. Eastern Central Standard Time, and that will be on the 22nd of January. And some places in the world will actually be on the 21st. So you need to go onto websites like time and date, etc., to find out when this applies to you. So it will be 1 degree 32 minutes of the astrological sign of Aquarius, which is the water bearer. S will mean it's the third of 5 new moons that are right at the beginning of the astrological sign, sort of enhancing this understanding that we are really entering into a time of new beginnings. And another aspect about this new moon is that it will be a super new moon. That means that when the moon is on its ecliptic circling the Earth, it's actually at that point where it's closest to the Earth, which means that its influence probably will be felt a little bit stronger, especially for those of us who are more so sensitive to these energies. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I'm not an astrologer. I just have an interest in astrology, what's happening around, especially when working with the moons, because there is more to, according to my opinions, working with the lunar energies than just looking at the phase of the moon. It's taking into note everything else that's around it as well, especially the planetary transits and aggressions. We've had a lot of that recently, and we are going to have a lot more this year, just to sort of keep these things in the back of your mind. So the astrologers that I do refer to when I compile this information, I do link below, and I would recommend that you support their work by checking out what they have to say as well. I've also mentioned in other videos, especially in relation to new moons, that at the time of the new moon, this is when the sun and the moon are conjunct or close together. And what's interesting about this new moon is that Pluto, that dwarf planet, has just moved into Aquarius as well. And I've actually got a whole video where I've talked about Pluto and Aquarius, because it's going to be quite an underlying influence this year as it transits backwards and forth across this Capricorn Aquarius axis. As I said, it's moving into Aquarius. It's going to stay there for 3 months, and it transits back into Capricorn. Then it moves into Aquarius again for 9 months, then it transits back or retrogrades back into Capricorn until it finally moves into Aquarius for good. It'll be next year sometime, where it will actually stay there until about 2044. As I said, I've already done quite an in-depth video about this, which will be linked below, because I don't know how to link above. Anyhow, at any time after a planet has this transition into the new sign, and I mentioned this earlier as well, this time could be rather intense, and as such, it really seems to be the focus for a new start, or a new vision, where we're heading into what's going to carry us forward, and what will be carrying forward with us as well, especially if we look at Mercury, which is 8 degrees of Capricorn, and Mars, 8th degree of Gemini, have only recently stationed direct after being retrograde. And this also affects the energy, because it's almost like when the tides change. There's a time where things are just beginning to slowly shift, but nothing's moving ahead at the moment. So that's sort of like they're in a holding pattern, ready to gather momentum in order to go forward. And we can utilize this energy, the communications, the thought processes of Mercury, and also passion and the direction and that sort of like get up and go of Mars. So that building this energy up for any forward moving projects that we have, especially around the time of this new moon. So just mentioned that there's more to working with this phase of the moon, there's been the new moon, than merely stating your intentions as to what you want to manifest. There is so much energy, I've already talked about it already, circulating, that to harness and utilize all of this to its fullest attention, you may actually want to give this manifesting phenomena that everybody's jumped on board about a little bit more serious thought. At the new moon, it's also a point in the sky where, according to many astrologers, it's the most dark period. So as an occultist, I tend to differ because I believe the aspect there is a dark moon, which is this dark point, and the new moon is actually when the first sliver of the moon begins to appear. So this is the difference between whether you're listening to an occultist or an astrologer. Many astrologers, unless they've got an occultist background, will not acknowledge or mention about the dark moon, or they'll blend the two dark moon and new moons together. And if you want to know more about this, shameless plug, my upcoming book on Earth's Silver Rays, A Guide to the Moon Mathemagic, is about to be released. In a couple of months' time, will be released, and I am almost in a position where I will have some pre-release copies. So official release is end of June, so you might want to keep an eye out from it. You can already purchase or put your name down for early copies if you want on Moon Books Publishing webpage. So back to the moon. So looking at this phase of the new moon, our focus should be on the initial manifestation of what we want to bring into our life, in particular something that we want to bring into fruition later on, i.e. when the full moon is in Aquarius. Now that's going to happen in about August this year. So what you're planting the seeds at now that you want to manifest, give it until August, until the full moon when it comes to fruition. Especially if you're wanting to plant these things for longer term things in your life. More clues for what that means and where you can focus on, look to your natal chart. And in particular, what house 1 degree between 32 minutes Aquarius falls into. And there's plenty of astrological pages on the internet where they will offer you a free web chart, for a free natal chart, where you can work out what house Aquarius falls into. So this is all giving another layer to what you're wanting to manifest with this new moon, if that is what you do. So let's sort of unpack it a little bit. Aquarius, of course, is the water bearer. It's an air sign. And according to astrologer Molly McCord, it relates to the cosmic intelligence. So the cosmic intelligence are these thoughts and ideas that tend to come out of the blue, that cause us to ponder over before actually applying them to a future direction. It's also interesting to note that at the time of the new moon, we will actually have 5 planets in air signs. 4 of them, moon, of course, and sun, Mercury and Pluto, are all going to be in Aquarius. And then we have Gemini, which will be the host of Mars. So this is very interesting because both Aquarius and Gemini are linked with social media. And yeah, it could be something that's manifesting in social media, or we might just need to pay a little bit more caution as to what could manifest in social media. But getting back to this fresh start, that could very well be amplified because the sun and the moon will interact with Jupiter the expanding planet, which is 4 degrees of Aries. Now, the moon is going to do just this, interact with Jupiter. As far as I'm aware, a couple of hours after the actual timing of the new moon. Well, it'll be 3 more days before the sun interacts with Jupiter. So an interpretation of this is that we will be putting more energy into what we are commencing. So if you're wanting to manifest something, you'll be getting a little bit of an energetic boost. So again, remember that these should be longer term goals. And with Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, supporting us. So we've got a lot of cosmic support for anything that we want to sort of bring in for this year. And with Uranus, I've mentioned in earlier videos as well, Uranus is the sort of rebel planet, the planet that sort of encourages us to sort of break out, rebel, break the mold that we find ourselves in, doing things or getting the energy or the courage to actually do something completely different. And it may not be drastic differences. It may just be career changes or resetting our boundaries around people, or saying, no, you're not going to continuously be available to work overtime or be the babysitter or whatever, when people seem to be taking maybe advantage of you. So looking at how you can do things differently that will actually bring you back into more of your authentic self. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. For people who want to do something completely different, there's this energetic support mechanism happening that will support you if you want to take a risk, if you want to be a little bit more adventurous. And especially if you want to follow the untrodden path that you have always been curious about. Sometimes we just need to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and take that big leap of faith. Now, just after this new moon, Venus, which is at 23 degrees of Aquarius, will almost be conjunct with Saturn, which will be at 24 degrees Aquarius. So a lot of Aquarian energy. So Venus will be giving a reality check, reminding us that something needs our serious consideration. Something is also coming into our awareness. So this may relate to financial decisions where Saturn is wanting us to be a little bit more responsible when we're signing up for things, or to consider the longer term implications and not be so rash. It could also relate to our sense of values and partnerships, and by partnerships in all aspects of our life, not just intimate partnerships, and also our commitments. So when our inner planets and our more personal planets interact with Saturn, so our inner planets are Venus, Mercury, and Mars, we are encouraged to actually slow down and sit in that energy and actually see what comes to light. Going back to Uranus, it'll be stationing direct either just prior to or at or during this new moon, depending on where you live in the world. And again, as I mentioned, Uranus sort of encourages us to break free. So where are we breaking out of old patterns? Uranus won't be at this point in Aquarius for another 88 years. So once again, maybe it's time to make those big life changes that you have been contemplating about. Maybe it's time to actually take that leap of faith. After the 22nd, all planets will be direct, enforcing the time of sitting with our energy to integrate it for the direction of something new, the possibilities, opportunities that are coming our way. So time to be open. This energy enables us to step into our more authentic, soul-driven self. Not the ego, but what is really from the heart, from the soul. What is really calling to us. And it is important that there is cosmic energetic support for all the new developments that are coming to the surface, or we're feeling that we're being pulled in, even if they're not manifested or we're not consciously aware of them. Considering we've spent the last couple of years if we've been doing the work, releasing, surrendering, moving through the stuff that's holding us back, now the energy is there to support us to take off into the new. So there is a lot of energy that seems to be supporting a new direction. If that is something that you want to do, you may not be wanting to do that. It may be something that you're not 100% consciously aware of yet. But there is this sort of something's happening, and it may be a direction that you're being drawn towards as well. So have faith to surrender to the cosmos, so to speak. And I want to just make a reminder that when Pluto is conjunct with the moon, it sort of also brings about a bit of our emotional intensity, which could be our first glimpse of how things will be playing out for us later on with this sort of transition that Pluto makes. And again, I'll refer to my earlier video about Pluto. This planet will be transitioning into Aquarius and back into Capricorn. First, it will happen in March. So it won't be at the new moon, as I mentioned earlier in this video. That's an error. I apologize for that. So we'll actually be moving into Aquarius in March, but sort of the build-up is happening now. It'll stay there for 3 months, so then it will go retrograde back into Capricorn in June. And then from January, it will be transitioning direct again and moving back into Aquarius, where it will stay there for another 9 months for going back into Capricorn. And I think it's around about November 2024, it will actually be moving into Aquarius proper. Therefore, it's rather important to become observant during these transitions and aggressions in and out of Aquarius and Capricorn as to how these energies are playing out in your own life. You might want to put these dates down in your diary, because I think it's important to keep in mind that we are co-creators and nothing truly just happens to us. Things are often happening for us. So this first new moon of the year, and it is something I guess to sort of celebrate, first new moon, is the time to plant the new seeds. But yes, look at what house 1 degree of Aquarius is in for you, and that will give you a little bit more of an insight as to where you should be directing your manifestation or any energy when it comes to working with this new moon. So I hope this has been of interest. As I said, I'll link below the video that I made about Pluto and also the astrologers who I drew this information from. Blessings.